Hello friends, and welcome to a brand new camera comparison between the Samsung Galaxy S24 FE against its predecessor, the S23 FE. Right now, we are recording at 4K at 30 frames per second. Tell me in the comment section below which one do you think has better colors and which one has a better audio.
As always, let's begin with a set of samples taken using the main cameras. If you've been following the channel for a while, you're probably familiar with the testing process. If you are a new viewer, let me quickly walk you through it. Every daylight photo is shot in auto mode, with no post-editing, and the scene optimizer is enabled on both devices for consistency. Generally speaking, these phones share a similar image processing style, as they are both manufactured by Samsung. There are a few key differences that stand out, and I'll break those down for you. The S24 FE tends to perform better when handling lighter colors, as it displays them more accurately, while its predecessor, the S23 FE, often overexposes them slightly. Another noticeable difference is the vibrancy. The newly released S24 FE has a more vibrant color palette, especially when it comes to greenery. The S23 FE, in contrast, appears a bit more muted and less saturated. When it comes to detail retention, both phones are sharp and there aren't significant differences in this area. In some cases, such as the sample shown here, the S24 FE tends to lean toward a slightly yellowish tone, while the S23 FE delivers a more natural color balance. In this particular example, I actually prefer the photo taken with the older device, as it looks a bit more true to life. What really surprised me is how well the older S23 FE performs when it comes to darker areas. For instance, in this sample, shadowy sections are more visible on the S23 FE, providing better contrast. Nevertheless, this does come at a slight cost since the white parts of the building are more accurately handled by the S24 FE, giving it a cleaner look. The difference becomes even more pronounced when comparing their ultra-wide cameras. As you can see, the S24 FE has managed to retain the creamy color of the building on the left quite well. Even the white building is perfectly preserved with excellent detail. In contrast, the S23 FE is still handling shadow areas slightly better, but the lighter colors are significantly overexposed, diminishing the overall balance of the image. In another example, despite the sun being behind the building, the light is somewhat more distracting on the older S23 FE, but interestingly, I still think its picture looks better compared to the S24 FE. It's a small difference, but it can sway preferences depending on what you're focusing on. There were instances where I couldn't detect any noticeable differences between the two. In these cases, both devices performed well, producing vibrant colors and excellent dynamic range. Their ultra-wide shots looked almost identical, showcasing great consistency in their ability to handle complex lighting scenarios. That said, this wasn't always the case. When green dominates the scene, such as with large areas of grass or foliage, the differences become more apparent. For example, in one of the samples, the grass appears more vibrant and lively on the S23 FE, while the trees look crisper and more defined on the newer S24 FE. Ultimately, it comes down to personal preference, but I find the newer FE tends to be sharper and handles light colors with greater accuracy. For instance, the ground in this sample is perfectly preserved on the S24 FE, while on the S23 FE, it appears brighter but not as natural or detailed. In my opinion, the newer model has the edge when it comes to ultra-wide shots, especially with lighter tones and textures. Both devices crop in at 2x without loss of detail. In this sample, the S23 FE produced a very saturated image, while I feel that the S24 FE delivers a more balanced and pleasing picture. In terms of sharpness, they appear to be on par with each other, maintaining a high level of clarity. At 3x, both phones switch to their dedicated telephoto sensors, and once again, they deliver sharp and vibrant images. This time, the difference between the two is minimal, with both producing great results. Their colors remain rich and the details are crisp, making it difficult to declare a clear winner. When zooming in all the way up to 10x, I noticed a more evident gap in performance. The S24 FE seems to maintain better sharpness than its predecessor. Although both devices lose some level of detail, the leaves on the S24 FE come out looking clearer, while the S23 FE attempts to compensate with an over-sharpening effect that doesn't look as natural. In another sample at 2x, both phones continue to deliver astonishingly similar results. They retain all the fine details of the scene, and their colors remain vibrant and accurate, just as you'd expect from Samsung devices. At 3x, there's a slight shift in color temperature with the S24 FE, where it displays slightly warmer tones compared to the S23 FE. Aside from this minor difference, they are virtually identical, which suggests that Samsung has been reusing the same telephoto sensor found in not only the S23 FE but also in previous models. Despite this, I believe the S24 FE performs marginally better, likely due to the improved processing power of its newer Exynos chipset. Portraits taken with the main cameras are impressive, but I believe the S24 FE has a slight edge. My face appears better exposed on the newer model, giving it a more balanced and natural look. Even the background in the S24 FE's portrait shot looks more refined and accurately rendered, while the S23 FE struggles a bit, leaving my face slightly underexposed and the background colors looking less vibrant in comparison. The difference becomes more noticeable in this other sample, which was particularly challenging. On the S23 FE, half of my face is noticeably underexposed, giving it an uneven tone. In contrast, the S24 FE manages exposure better, presenting my skin color in a more lifelike manner. Interestingly, the S23 FE pulls ahead in the background, where the colors look more vivid and lively compared to its successor. When zoomed in at 3x, the results mirror those of the main cameras. The S24 FE again handles skin tones better, offering a more natural representation of my face. The difference in brightness is now much smaller, making it less noticeable than with the main cameras. Both phones struggled a bit with edge detection, particularly around my hair, where mistakes were made. Pictures taken with their front cameras reveal a more noticeable difference. Samsung phones have never been the most accurate when it comes to skin tones, and this comparison is no exception. Between these two devices, I believe the S24 FE has a slight advantage, as my face appears to have a more natural tone. On the S23 FE, my skin looks a bit pale. Additionally, my hair and the background seem more refined and visually pleasing on the newer S24 FE. This difference wasn't just a one-time occurrence, as the same pattern continues in other scenes as well. It appears that Samsung has made some subtle but effective upgrades in the software, particularly with image processing, given that the selfie camera hardware remains unchanged. Both phones do a solid job in retaining my facial details, but as I mentioned earlier, I personally prefer how I look on the newer device. When recording videos with their main cameras, the S24 FE produces brighter footage compared to its predecessor, but it doesn't provide as much contrast. Personally, in this situation, I actually prefer the richer colors of the older S23 FE, which gives the scene more depth and dimension. The brighter video from the S24 FE feels a bit flat in comparison. In terms of stabilization, both devices are really good. Switching to their ultra-wide cameras, the S24 FE continues to deliver brighter and more lively footage. It has better dynamic range, which makes shadow areas look clearer and less crushed. The S23 FE, while still performing well, produces darker shadow areas, and the overall video doesn't feel as dynamic or visually appealing when compared to the newer device. At 3x, one of the first things I noticed was that the S23 FE struggles with stabilization, making the footage appear shaky. In contrast, the stabilization on the newer S24 FE is significantly better, keeping the video much steadier. The S24 FE is also brighter in its footage, but interestingly, I find myself preferring the more muted colors of the older model. Moving on to low light, and every picture from this point forward is captured with night mode enabled on auto seconds. Just like in daylight, both phones do a good job retaining my facial details, but the S24 FE continues to edge out its predecessor by preserving my skin tone more accurately. The colors on the newer model look more lifelike, and I think this makes a noticeable difference. While the S23 FE is still a solid performer on its own, there's no denying that the S24 FE shows some significant improvements, especially when it comes to handling color accuracy and exposure. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, it really helps out the channel. The S24 FE consistently produces more vibrant colors, while the S23 FE comes across as a bit flat in comparison. Light sources are also handled more effectively by the newer phone, which helps maintain better overall exposure. While the colors on the S23 FE aren't quite as pleasing, both devices continue to impress in terms of detail. Their images remain very sharp, and finer elements like the texture of the pink building stand out. In this next sample, if you look closely, the sky shows a significant amount of noise on the S23 FE, while the newer model performs much better, delivering a cleaner image. Nonetheless, both phones deserve credit for their performance here, especially considering that in real life, this area was almost pitch black with very little ambient light. Overall, while the S24 FE introduces some noticeable improvements, the older S23 FE remains a strong contender. Given the significant price drop since its release, the S23 FE's cameras still produce fantastic photos that can easily rival many of its current competitors. If you're on a budget, it's definitely a device worth considering. In well-lit scenarios, both phones perform well, even when capturing images with their ultra-wide cameras. At first glance, the pictures seem quite similar, but after closer inspection, it becomes clear that the picture taken with last year's S23 FE isn't quite as sharp. In contrast, the image on the left, captured with the S24 FE, looks amazing with superior clarity. One thing I appreciate about both devices is their consistency in color reproduction across all lenses. For example, the S24 FE remains vibrant and true to its color tone, similar to how it handled scenes with its main camera. The colors are more vivid compared to its predecessor, yet they retain the same overall balance. The most significant difference in this comparison comes from this particular scene where the S24 FE truly shines. Its image is bright, sharp, and bursting with vibrant colors, while the S23 FE's photo is noticeably darker and has more noise. Although a brighter image doesn't always equate to a better one, in this case, it certainly does, as the S24 FE produces a much more impressive result. That said, the gap between the two phones isn't as wide in other samples, especially when there are more light sources in the frame. While the S24 FE remains the more pleasing option to the eye, the S23 FE still manages to hold its own, offering solid performance even though it's not quite on the same level. At 2x, the S24 FE displays noticeably better colors, is sharper, and handles light sources impressively well. In comparison, the S23 FE takes a significant hit in quality, and its image doesn't look as polished as what the newer model produces. The gap in clarity and detail is quite evident here. At 3x, the differences between the two devices are less pronounced, but I'd still argue that the S24 FE maintains a slight edge. The older S23 FE now performs much better, and although it doesn't quite match its successor, it certainly looks much improved compared to the 2x results. In another 2x sample, I noticed that the image from the S24 FE is a touch smoother, yet it still manages to retain all the essential details of the scene. Meanwhile, the S23 FE tends to apply more aggressive sharpening, which doesn't help its case, as it results in a somewhat unnatural look. When zoomed to 3x in scenes with fewer light sources, the S24 FE continues to shine by preserving colors efficiently. The S23 FE, on the other hand, produces a darker image and starts to lose some fine details. Portraits taken at night present a similar story. My face on the S24 FE is better exposed, and the overall picture is more accurate in terms of color reproduction. The S23 FE's image has a noticeable grayish tone, which detracts from the overall appeal. I found the picture from the newer model much more accurate and pleasing to the eye. Beyond just color differences, there are also clear distinctions in details. The S23 FE struggles to keep my facial details as sharp as the S24 FE. However, in this specific case, the older S23 FE does a slightly better job of keeping my hair in focus, whereas the S24 FE missed a bit in that area. So, what do you guys think? Which one was your winner in this comparison? As expected, the S24 FE brings some improvements, but the difference isn't massive, as the S23 FE still performed really well in many of these samples. From what I saw, the S24 FE was better in terms of skin colors and a bit with the ultra-wide camera. If you did enjoy this video, then please hit the thumbs up button to let us know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.